for me, I kind of stayed away from that term millennial. And then I kind of realized that we're a very powerful generation. And I almost feel that this term got that negative connotation as a way to keep us down and a way to kind of pull that power away from us. Because if you think about it, we're the generation that has been the bridge between, I call them like the proverbial the boomers who, they say that you shouldn't do this, or they say that you should wait till your kid does this. I'm like, ditch the they, no more of the they. And we now, like I said, we're responsible to be that bridge for the next generation and the upcoming generations to show that we can do things completely differently on our own terms, in our own timeline, and it's okay. And we have the responsibility really to raise the next generation of kind humans and people that will do good in the world so that that can keep on going.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be? Into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to the show. Today I have on the show Kasey Potts, and Kasey is a content creator and podcast host who helps millennial moms overcome the overwhelm of everyday life with confidence, humor, and style. She is the host of the podcast Kasey's Korner, which you can hear our interview here pretty soon on her podcast. And she holds conversations on this podcast with experts and influencers about confidence, body image, women's health issues, alongside a dose of healthy lifestyle tips, humor, and nostalgia. And she really has such a fun take on being a millennial mom. That's really what we talk about today. She is like the ultimate millennial mom. She started Kasey's Korner at 10 years old on Radio Disney in the 90s. She was a part of like the Disney crew, right? She's worked with a ton of celebrities and influencers. She has done and seen it all. She was a senior brand manager for celebrity chef Wolfgang Puck. And so she has this experience of being in this life and times that we're living in. And whether or not you consider yourself listening a millennial mom, and you really may not be listening to this show, you may not be a millennial mom, but you could be like me. And I didn't consider myself a millennial mom. But if you're born, basically, what does she say? She says it in the show, 1982 to like 1993 or something like that is you're considered a millennial. So if you were born within that time frame, you are. Even if you weren't, there's so much to learn just from Kasey's outlook on life and really just what living in this day and age really means for us as women and as leaders of future generations. And I love her take on this. We have such a fun conversation and I'm so excited to share with y'all. So let's jump in. Hey y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Kasey and I'm so excited to bring a real conversation to y'all today about momming and about just kind of parenting in this age that we're living in now. And I feel like Kasey has a lot of wisdom she can share with us today. So thanks so much for joining me today, Kasey.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you've kind of put yourself as a sort of like millennial mom expert. At least that's the way I look at it. I've listened to your podcast and kind of followed along. And I really like this kind of position you've taken to kind of help us. And honestly, I don't really know if I looked at myself as a millennial mom until I started listening to your podcast. I'm like, oh, I guess I am a millennial mom. Like, I don't really associate myself as like being a millennial, but we totally are. Like, we're born in the, whatever it is, 1980, whatever, like whatever.
It's 82 to 91, I believe is technically. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And it's funny because I feel like we associate millennials with like, I don't know. I feel like we're too old to be millennials. Like I think that's how I felt. Like, no, I am a millennial.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that there was this negative connotation to the term millennial because on the chart of generations, we are actually Generation Y. Okay. And about 10 years ago, the term millennial came into play. And that was honestly, the connotation to that was like, selfies in front of a pink wall and avocado toast and, this very pastel aesthetic, this vapid millennial term just kind of started. I mean, Pantone even made a millennial pink color. I think they actually dubbed it millennial pink. And there was such, like I said, this negative connotation about how millennials are just sucking life out of their parents.
Yes.
They're still living at
Yes.
home. They're spending all their money on the
Yeah.
avocado toast, whatever. So for me, I kind of stayed away from that term millennial. And then I kind of realized that we're a very powerful generation. And I almost feel that this term got that negative connotation as a way to keep us down and a way to kind of pull that power away from us. Because if you think about it, we're the generation that has been the bridge between, I call them like the proverbial they, the boomers who, they say that you shouldn't do this, or they say that you should wait till your kid does this. I'm like, ditch the they, no more of the they.
Yep.
And we now, like I said, we're responsible to be that bridge for the next generation and the upcoming generations to show that we can do things completely differently on our own terms, in our own timeline, and it's okay. And we have the responsibility really to raise the next generation of kind humans and people that will do good in the world so that can keep on going. So yeah, I had this struggle of like, where am I going to, everyone wants to niche down in in digital communities and everything. And I started to lean into the millennial mom space because first of all, no one else was claiming it. So I'm like, here I am. I'll take it. Sure, I'll take that. Because for me, so I am from Massachusetts. I moved out to California 11 years ago with my high school sweetheart. At the time, he was my fiance. Now he's my husband. And we just we have no family here. So we decided to start a family. We're raising our 5.5-year-old daughter. We're kind of doing it all on our own. And I think that that's something that the millennial generation is really spearheading, is this whole like flying the nest and figuring it out on our own. And that's why it really made me mad when there was this correlation between millennials being lazy and sticking at home, when it's like, no, actually, we're flying the coop. We're making moves. We're doing things. So, there's always some outliers. There's always going to be, how many 40-year-olds are still living with their parents? How many 50-year-olds are still, there's always outliers. So I looked at it as like taking the power back in the term millennial and really showing other moms and parents that it's totally fine to figure it out on your own. And I am happy to be a resource to find these little other experts in the corners of the internet, bring them together and share that information out, because it hasn't been there in years past.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love that you really have spirit, because I don't think I've ever seen a millennial mom expert. So I feel like you have spearheaded the movement. Like, why not? And I guess let's go along the same lines. Like, what makes, because I totally agree with you, the perspective on like what makes millennial moms different. But what do you think is like the significant piece there? Like the piece that makes, like what kind of power do you see us holding as millennial moms? Like what power do we have to like really make moves and to really like make a difference?
So the way I look at it is that we have had so much experience. We have lived through a lot. And I think that we maybe kind of suppress that fact a little bit, but we really have. We have come from the time of dial-up and floppy disks. We lived through Blockbuster. We saw the birth of Netflix. We had Netflix on a DVD.
Yes.
We saw the birth of social media. I always tell people, having gone to college in Boston in the early 2000s, I was one of the first 20 schools to get Facebook.
Yes.
So like I have seen the birth of social media and have really evolved with it. So I think that that's a really significant power that we kind of have as a generation, is like, no, we don't just use Facebook to be, keyboard crusaders and post things about our dog or our grandchildren all the time. Like we really know how to build communities and empires and businesses in the palm of our hands or on our computers. And I think the other thing, that it's a double-edged sword, because with the birth of social media, we also unfortunately kind of developed I call it the comparative narrative, right? Where we saw all of our peers, and because social media and Facebook started off in college, you were kind of dispersing. Again, you were getting away, you were flying the nest, but you saw what all these other people were doing and you started to compare. And you really, I think it was our responsibility to see how we were going to consume that content, how we were going to let it. And I always say consume content, because you let content become part of you. And you can either use it for good or for evil. And there was a lot of power, I feel like, in that, and a lot of growth that came from social media if you let it help you grow and if you let it help you evolve. So I look at that as one of the most powerful tools that millennials really have gained.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's huge. Well, and it's the intention behind it, right? Like, what is the intent behind using it, right? Is it to feel how, crappy your life is or compare, or is it, like you're saying, like to build communities and to build businesses? I mean, millennials, like I have so many friends who are millennials who have built, multi-million-dollar businesses with single-handedly with Facebook. Like, but that's it. Like, that's the only way they built. So, I mean, the possibilities are there, and it's just like, what is the intent behind it? Like, how do you, like, your perspective on it, and living through, man, we did live through a lot of stuff, right?
We did. And I think that, it's really hard to forget the point of like, at least for me, it was my first week of high school when 9/11 happened. Like that was my first week of high school. The weirdest thing, we happened to be out of school that day because there was a fire in our high school the day before or over the weekend. So like that Monday, we didn't have school.
Yeah.
And like watching that all unfold and not ever having something like that with that much of a significant impact before in our lifetime, in my lifetime, was so impactful. And unfortunately, one of my fellow classmates, his mom was on one of the planes. She was a flight attendant. I mean, the planes were coming out of Boston. She was a flight attendant in Boston.
That's crazy. So you were like in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was definitely, I think, an eye opener. And then how many other unprecedented events have we lived through, right?
Totally.
Like we had the first Black president, which was amazing. We've had so many ups and so many downs that no wonder. I always joke that like millennials hold on to nostalgia and like the pop culture that we grew up with. Like it's our comfort food. Because it's before all hell broke loose.
Yep. It totally
and it's like, give me the boy bands. Give me the Nickelodeon.
Back to the 90s. Yes.
I am holding on to that because that's where we felt safe. And it was before we ever had to kind of put up shields or feel our true anxieties.
Yeah. I mean, really and truly, like we lived through the turn of a century, and that like totally, I mean, I just feel like there was this huge shift just as a collective at the turn of the century. I mean, that was just start of...
Right. How much anxiety was put on us with Y2K?
Oh my gosh.
We all thought the world...
we were going to die.
Every computer was going to blow up because it didn't know how to change to 00.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like we had all this impending doom starting to come into our psyche really at a really young age. We were like, I was in 8th grade, I think.
Yeah, I think I was, how old? I think I was in the 8th grade too. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, we lived through a lot, and we've seen so many shifts. And that's the other thing, because I want to talk about this too, because I know that you have your own journey with this, but we lived through, I think with the 80s, I mean, let's be honest, we're still living through it, but I think the 80s and the 90s were such a huge era of diet culture, and it either made you or it broke you. And I feel like, I know I'm a product of diet culture. And I remember, my parents doing every diet under the sun at home and not putting any blame on anybody. But I know that it definitely impacted my relationship with food growing up and just sort of eating behaviors that I expressed. So what was your experience there?
Yeah, it's something I do talk about a lot because it took a long time for me to understand where all this diet culture obsession in my head really came from. And I didn't realize how much of a part of me it really was. And especially because like in my head, I never look at it as that I've ever had any sort of disordered eating because I'm not skinny. Like I was like, how can I have an eating disorder? I'm not skinny. And that was a really weird thing for me. As I started to unpack all of this, I didn't realize how distorted my brain really was around food because I've always been at least a size 8 or bigger. And again, even just saying that, like that's a part of diet culture too. Right. What I just said, I realize it, but it is. And I'm doing the work, guys. I'm doing the work. But for me, yeah, just like you said, I grew up with my parents going to Weight Watchers meetings and getting tagged along and watching them have to weigh in. And then when it came time for me to feel like I needed to lose weight, whether it be for prom or in college, I would do the Weight Watchers thing and had that same kind of cycle of, all right, counting the points and figuring out what this is worth. And just the more I've learned around the psychology of it, it just makes me so uncomfortable and realizing that I was bringing Atkins bars or Special K bars to high school, to my lunch for high school, right? Like, who made a diet off of cereal? It's bonkers to me. Like, a sugared up cereal was a diet, Special K diet. Oh my goodness. But yes, that has been really a big part of my journey, because even after I had my daughter and everything, I was just so uncomfortable with my body. It affected my breastfeeding journey too, because I just hated the way that my body was acting and looking and feeling. And I realized how much of my body image issues are so deep, and that they came from, my mom not being comfortable with her body and the way that she kind of consumed media at the time as well. And my mom has always been thinner than me. So in my head, when I heard her not being happy with her body, automatically I'm like, well, then what's that mean for me?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I am now, as a mom, so careful about what I say about my body. And even if it's not words, about the body language. Like, there's been times where I'll go into my daughter's room, or she'll come into my room and I'm just in my underwear, and she'll grab my butt or she'll grab my belly. And it takes everything in me not to like try to cover up, or not to have that negative body language of like being ashamed of whatever it is that she's seeing. And it's so hard. It's so hard for me to still do that. But I know what that kind of translates to over time for a little girl.
Totally. Yeah. And I think because we were like, diet culture was so ingrained in like the era that we grew up in, I feel like that's kind of another, like you were talking about, like the power we have as millennial moms. I feel like that's another piece for us to like undo, right? Like another piece for us to untangle, because I mean, and I can't say it was, for me, it was multiple things and how my relationship with food and all that. But I think, like you're saying, like there is so much to be undone within that, the body image stuff, like how we talk about ourselves, how we talk about food, our relationship with food. And especially when you have daughters, I have a daughter too. And I mean, it totally shifts things. And I'm the same. And mine is still like, she's only 19 months. So we're not quite to the point where she can understand what I'm saying. Yeah. But it's not just what you say, but it's how you act. It's your body, like all of that. I mean, all of that plays a part in it. I think that's a huge piece for us to undo, that piece that's been ingrained in us with the body image stuff and the diet stuff, like all of that.
Yeah. And it's just the awareness, because there was definitely a light bulb a couple years ago that kind of went off, of realizing where all this obsession came from. Because in 2019, I started doing the keto diet, and I did it from like 2019 through the majority of lockdown and COVID. And the way I look at it, it was like, people went either way,
right. One
when it came to lockdown, like depending on how you ate. But for me, it was the one thing I could control.
Yeah.
So I was very strict, and, we were ordering our groceries. We weren't going out to eat. I was ordering exactly what I knew would fit into my plan for the day. And I realized, like, I was just constantly posting that kind of stuff on social media, and my following was growing, and I was getting so much interaction and so much more feedback. And in my head, I'm like, wait, so the thinner I get, the more people come to me. And there was a moment after, like, when I kind of hit a plateau and the keto just stopped working, because keto is not sustainable. And I was like, wait a second, this is where I somehow drew a line, a correlation between, if I lost weight, I would be more accepted. More people would come to me. I would be more, for lack of a better term, popular and influential. And it made me feel really icky. And then there was also a time where I realized I was posting before and after pictures, right? And my before could have been someone's goal. And I was putting a negative term and a negative voice around that before picture. And it just kind of hit me. I never wanted to make anyone feel less than. And at that point, I was in the whole MLM world, and I was promoting certain products that went along with the lifestyle. And I just realized I was preying on people's insecurities, and I just felt so weird about it. And I just stopped. And it was really at that point when I looked at my own relationship with diet culture, my own relationship with food. And it's still a journey. I will tell you, there are so many times where I'm still like afraid of carbs or when I am just not eating balanced because of the warped perception I have around certain foods. So it takes a lot of work to as much work as it is to be on diets, it's even more work to like undo the diet culture from your brain.
100%. And it's because I just feel like and again, like I said before, I mean, we're still living it. Like we're still living it.
Totally.
It's still I don't even know the word for it, but and social media, just kind of perpetuates it where that's all you see is the before and after pictures and all of that. And gosh, it is such a huge thing because it's ingrained in our, conditioned in us for it to feel normal, like, and for that to just be like, for us to accept
and to be drawn to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Like there's such allure to seeing a before and after picture and then reading how did they do it and wanting to see, it's human nature to see how people can make themselves for quote like better.
Right.
And you have to really take a second and like realize that's someone else's journey. You're just seeing the highlight reel. You're not seeing the whole story. Even for me, I had to remind myself that it took me like a good 5 months to lose the first chunk of weight on keto. And then I just kind of kept it going.
Right.
But now even I've gained 30 of the 40 pounds back and I'm like, well, how do I do it again? And I'm like, no, it's no, stop. Stop, Kasey, stop.
Yep.
And so right now I'm really just trying to heal my overall mental health around food and really emphasize more on like balanced plates and not just looking at certain food groups as being the end all be all for how I should be eating and enjoying it. Because again, back to being a mom and being the most influential person on your child.
Totally.
She would offer me a bite of her pasta at dinner and I'd say no. She would want to, do you want some of my peanut butter and jelly? And I'd say no. And I just started to realize what that was actually. There was going to be a point in her life where she would make a correlation of me not eating things because I wasn't happy with the way that I looked, because I remember that being my experience. So I had to accept the awareness and like do something about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, the guilt and the shame around it are real. And I think just like you're saying, like, demonizing a food or a food group like that, like my son is old and he's 4, he's old enough to know. And like, I have to be careful with that too. Like, boys are just as susceptible to diet culture as girls are. I think girls, there's more pressure on girls, but I have to be careful with that too. Like, I don't want to demonize a food group. And, it's you have to be so careful with your verbiage around stuff and being able to, like, of course we want them to eat things that are quote unquote healthier and less of the things that aren't necessarily as, nutritious, but it's like being able to use the right words for a 4-year-old. Like that's a hard thing to do, but I think it's our responsibility to undo what's been done. And that was a big thing for me when I opened my studio. I have a Pilates and fitness studio, and this isn't to like bash anybody who runs their business in this way, but I know a lot of gyms and a lot of boutique studios, like they run their business on before and after pictures. And that's fine. But I didn't want that vibe in my studio. Like, of course, we're up for people changing their bodies and all of that. But it's like the vibe is to do it because you love to do it and because it's fun and you enjoy it. Like, it's not, the physical changes are like, just an added benefit or a side effect. But I just didn't want to build it around that.
I think that at least for me, someone who is not the first like cheerleader for fitness, I definitely begrudgingly do it, but do it because I know it's the best thing for me. Right. That going into a exercise space, a studio, a class, whatever, and seeing a before and after picture. And if you're consistently going and all of a sudden you're not feeling like you're that after picture, I think that it gets extremely discouraging and you easily would want to give up.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's crazy to me. And again, I really think it goes back to how we were conditioned in this millennial era. I think it's like how some people are like, they're totally motivated by it. And I just feel like it's this weird, like mental, psychological thing that has to be undone to like really transform how we look at it. I mean, it's not just, it's food and it's fitness, it's all the things, but like to transform our thoughts around like what our motivation is behind that kind of thing,
Yeah. I know. As you were saying that, I quickly got a glimpse of, again, growing up in the Y2K era. If you think about it, how many commercials, Weight Watchers, I can't even say it, Jenny Craig, Slim Fast, Nutrisystem, like these are the commercials that it's not even like they were on late night when adults were supposed to be watching TV. They were on all the time. Bowflex, Shake Weight, like how many of them, the exercise infomercial commercials that would come on. I think that it was just, it's always been there. It's not like social media has just made it, I think, a little bit more personal and maybe a little bit more saturated, probably a little oversaturated. But I do also tell people all the time, like, you have to remember how you can curate your social media and the content you consume so easily. And if you feel like you're seeing content that is making you feel less than or making you insecure about something, mute the person, unfollow the person. And if it's some crazy big fitness influencer, they don't know you'll unfollow them. Like,
exactly. Exactly. I think that is such a huge piece of advice.
Yeah. You really start just filling your feed with things that make you happy, people that make you happy, people that inspire you and make you feel good and not make you feel crappy about your body or about your life and your lifestyle. And even if that's people you grew up with, if you feel, again, like you're constantly having that comparative narrative, mute the person for a little while or just, turn them off. Whatever. It was Facebook has snooze. Facebook has the snooze button. It's the best thing ever.
It's so for that purpose, for that reason. That's so true. It's so true. What do you think? I love to give like tangible takeaways in these episodes. What do you think are some things that, as millennial moms, like what are some things that you think moms can be doing right now to, what's the word I'm looking for, to like capitalize on this era that we grew up in and to like make it better for our kids?
I think honestly, it's gaining that awareness of what it was that kind of made us tick or made us uncomfortable or put certain jaded or rose-colored glasses on us as we grew up, and really do the work to eliminate that for your kid. And if that's, you didn't, I don't know, I think that there's a lot of pressure, like, if you didn't do something as a kid, you're kind of forcing your kids into it, right? And that whole living vicariously. But there are a lot of our parents who did that same thing. And then maybe we started hating piano lessons or maybe we started. So really, I think it's someone told me that it's not about finding balance, it's about finding harmony. And I thought that was such a good way to put it, where it's not. And that's how I finally like accepted it. It's not about balance, but it's about harmony. When you think about an orchestra and a symphony, there's sometimes that the horns are louder and the percussion's softer. There's sometimes when the strings are louder and something else is softer. So it's not about figuring out like how to balance work and family or sports and school. It's seeing which things are going to be louder at different times and kind of allowing that to happen and not letting your family get so stressed out about everything. I think that was a rule we made. We didn't do the soccer thing. We don't do the weekend sport thing because my husband works, he's out of the house 7 to 7 most of the time every day. So the weekends are our times to do things. And I did not want to be rushing around to soccer or whatever was going to be another stressor that we didn't need. So that was something kind of we did as a family. And also my daughter was not into the soccer.
Yeah. Well, that always helps.
That was totally fine. But again, I didn't push her into it because everyone else was doing soccer.
Right.
She really didn't like it. And I'm not going to force her because maybe down the road in a couple of years, she will like it. But another thing, like tangible takeaway that I do tell people, like I just mentioned, about curating your social feeds, because it is so important to not get into this spiral of, I keep saying it, the comparative narrative of like you're scrolling, and it's literally if you think about it, when you scroll, right, the way your finger goes, it is a spiral and you keep it going. You keep flicking that finger and it's a spiral and you get yourself dug deeper and deeper. But if you can come away from it with a little bit of motivation, a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of a sense of community, then it's worth it. Then it's good for you.
Yep, exactly. That has been a huge thing for me. I guess I probably want to say it was during COVID when I know a lot of people can attest this, like spiraling was really easy to do because it's like you had nothing to do but to spiral. And, my business was hanging on by a thread and I was pregnant. So my sanity was holding on by a thread. So I found that, and I kind of started a little before that, but I feel like during COVID is really when I was like, you know what? I don't need to know what my competition's doing. Who cares? Right. I don't need to know what these people are doing. Who cares? And so that's exactly what I did. I'm like, I want to see inspirational things and I want to see spiritual things and I want to see happy things. And, that has been such and I cannot tell you the impact on your mental health that it has when you can look at your feed, in a moment of like, hey, I need a distraction. And it's like happy, uplifting and positive things. And I mean, it's such a shift in your mental health.
It is. Yeah, it helps. And that's why I joke saying use social media for good and not evil, because you can really, really have it be a positive impact on your day to day. But unfortunately, a lot of people just don't think to take the time to shift it that way.
Right. Yeah. Or they're just too stuck in the habit of like, I think people get in this spiral and the habit, they crave that. They just like to be on there to hate on other people, just to like, and they follow people just because they like to hate.
Oh, I've heard of people saying like they hate follow people. I'm like, what? That's a thing. That's a thing. It's crazy.
It totally is. It totally is. But I also loved what you said about the balance piece, because I think that's another piece for, working parents. It's constantly like that, like work-life balance thing. And there's no such thing as work-life balance. And there's also nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to be all in at work and all in at home. But like, I love how you said that, like creating harmony within those. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. But you can be a successful working parent and you can also have a family. Like you can do both. And it's like putting harmony. And like you're saying, like being able to find the opportunities to create a sense of balance where like for y'all, it's like on the weekends, this is our time. We're not going to do weekend sports, like finding a way to kind of like shift things so that you can be able to create more harmony within those two worlds. Like, I love that. That's such good advice.
Yeah. That was a piece of advice I got, and I just keep on spreading it because I thought it was so helpful.
It's so good. It's so good. I love that. So I do have one more question I want to ask you that I'd like to finish off with. Before I do that, let everybody know where they can find out more about you and everything you're doing.
Yeah. So you can find daily content from me over on Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. And my handle is @It's Kasey Potts. And then a weekly podcast. The show is called Kasey's Korner. And I do call it the ultimate resource for millennial moms. So we talk about all things women's wellness, parenting, and even some nostalgia here and there, because like I said, it's our comfort food.
It is. I love it. I love it. I love it. So fun. Okay. So last question I want to ask you is, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Oh, I don't think I would have said this until becoming a mom, but honestly, I think there is such a responsibility for shaping good, kind, considerate humans. And there is such, especially I live out here in Los Angeles, guys, like there is such an entitlement complex in our world, and I cannot stand it. And it oozes everywhere. And it's just, it's too much. It's getting to be too much. Everyone feels like they need to stand on some soapbox. And I know it's ironic for a podcast host to say that, but I do think that there is such an importance to shape the next generation that we're raising to really be kind, considerate humans.
I love that. I feel like that is such a profound statement. And it is. It's creating kind humans. Like, that's all it is. I love that so much. I love it. Thank you so much, Kasey, for sharing all of your insight. And I really hope you'll go check out her podcast. It is full of goodies for all you. And I think most of my listeners are millennial moms. So it's
nice. Come hang out with me too after you hang out with Hope.
Exactly. It's such a perfect place to go hang out. So thanks so much, Kasey, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I know how I can provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics that you want to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.